I'm Martin from Evolution, and I'm really pleased and excited, although a little bit stressed at the moment, to see so many people here today. There's still lots of people arriving, and there are over 100 people from all over the world on this webinar, which illustrates the importance of resilience in this chaotic and scary world we're living in right now. I hope you and your family are and carry on, continue to be well throughout this pandemic, and that you're really well placed, therefore, emotionally, to take advantage of the opportunities that will hopefully arise afterwards. Over the next 30 minutes, I will be talking about resilience. So what it is, how it is that some people are more resilient than others, and how you can learn to be more resilient by changing some thought processes and some behaviors. So a couple of housekeeping points. Please stop your video. You all have done, thank you, to help improve the connection. And if you do have any questions, please type them on the chat section at the bottom of the screen. I'll have a short question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So I am recording this webinar, and I hope I'll make it available to everybody afterwards. So let's start with, excuse me, question. So what is resilience? We wanted to talk about resilience. So let's see what resilience is. I shall just share this. Here we go. So what's resilience? Well, a definition of resilience is that it's the ability to bounce back from difficulties. And there's been quite a lot of research on resilience, and most of that recent research has been fairly recent. And one of my favorite bits is by a person called Emmy Werner, and she was doing a longitudinal study of children on Hawaii. So she followed the whole cohort, everybody who was born in a particular year in the 1950s on Hawaii, through 30 years of their lives. And what she found was that depending on background, some people were growing up more naturally resilient than others. Although some people who were coming from really difficult backgrounds might be resilient, but some might not be resilient. And yet some people who had really supportive and helpful backgrounds were growing up being unresilient. But the most interesting thing for me was that some of those non-resilient children became resilient as they got older. So that implies that resilience isn't fixed, that we can influence how resilient we are. And I asked you to carry out a questionnaire that I sent through to you. And so what I'd like to do is just have a look at, if you've got all those numbers with you, what those numbers actually meant. And if we look at this score here, if you scored between 0 and 37, you've got what's called a developing level of resilience. So you probably aren't very resilient at the moment. You know, you might not feel that you are in control of events, and you feel like you're at the mercy of events, and you feel like you go through quite a lot of trauma. And in fact, you would benefit from developing aspects of your resilient behavior, which is what we're going to talk about as we go through this morning. If you score 38 to 43, you may occasionally have days when you struggle to feel that kind of resilience and the ability to bounce back, and you feel like things get on top of you, but you rarely feel ready to give up. Whereas if you score from 0 to 37, sometimes you may do. So 44 to 48 is about having a very strong level of resilience. So because you've scored above average, it indicates that you're pretty good at rolling with the difficulties that you have. And you probably have an impressive track record of turning setbacks into opportunities. And of course, if you scored at the high end of 49 to 60, that indicates that you're very resilient most of the time, that you rarely fail to bounce back from difficulties or for those sort of traumas that you come across. Whatever life throws at you, you believe that you can make your own luck and bounce back from it. And the really, really good news about this, of course, is that you can move your way up through those levels. So if you are low at the moment, by changing the way you think, by changing some of your behaviors, you can move up to find yourself even more resilient, perhaps, than you are now. So I guess the key question here is that you come across some people who are more resilient than others, and that's why we've got a score from 0 to 60. So what is it about them that makes them resilient? How is it that some people are more resilient than others? And this is all about perception. This is all about how you perceive the world around you. So there was one researcher who came up with the idea that there's no such thing as a trauma, that it's just an event, and that how we deal with events is what makes the difference. So if I ask you just briefly, just to think of an elephant, so get a picture of an elephant in your mind. And as you see that picture of an elephant, if you see that picture of an elephant, I'll try and change the slide here. So picture an elephant, and you probably see something that looks a bit like this. Or maybe it looks like this. Maybe your picture is like this. Or maybe the elephant that you see is like this one down here, or this one here, or this one here. Still more people arriving. Hello to everybody who's just arrived. So the point about this is that we all interpret things differently. So this really is about perception. It is about how we perceive the world around us. And I always say that it's not what happens to you that's important. It's what you do with what happens to you in here that makes the difference. And this is why some people can see an event as being traumatic, and some people see it as just being an event, or even sometimes as an opportunity. So the way that we perceive the world is what makes the difference. So let's have a look at how this actually happens. So how is it that we see something, we feel differently about it, we behave in a particular way? So I've got a diagram here that will illustrate that. Share the screen. So here we are. So we respond to an external event. So whatever that event may be, we take all of our information in from the outside world, make sense of it internally, and that affects the way that we feel about it. So we start with 100% of the available information. And that information is available to everybody. So it's what happens with that information that makes us different and makes us perceive the world differently. And so what we do is we filter that information. And the senses are the first filters that we have on the information that's available to us. And the point about this is that, we will delete, we will distort, and we will generalize the information that comes from the outside world. And the thing about the senses is that they aren't actually that good. Although they're the only way we can interact with the world outside, we can't see infrared light and we can't see ultraviolet light. We can only hear, certain frequencies of sound, which is why dog whistles work on dogs, but not on people. So immediately we're reducing the amount of information that we can base our opinion of the world on. And the thing is that people see things differently. So some people have got better vision than others. Some people have got better hearing than others. Some people are colorblind. And then our beliefs and values, so the things that we believe about the world around us, affect the way that we think. They will make generalizations. So we will have beliefs that make generalizations around the world. So we will believe, for example, that certain people are kind, certain types of people are kind, certain types of people aren't. These are generalizations. So at the end of generalizations are things like ageism and sexism and religious intolerance and racism. And we believe things like old people can't learn new stuff. And then we have values, and values are about what's important to us. And the point about these beliefs and these values is that they filter the information even more, so that we only get about 3% into our brain that helps us make a decision about the world around us. So our internal representation, our perception of the world is based on a tiny amount of the available information, which is why we all see different elephants when we picture an elephant in our mind, about how we all see the world differently. That perception of the world affects our state. It affects the way that we feel about the world around us. And in turn, that emotional state affects our physiology, so affects us physically. So let's take an example. Let's say that you have a belief that you're really bad at presenting information to groups of people, but part of your job means that you have to do presentations to customers, to suppliers, to employees or colleagues or whatever. So the external event is you standing in front of a group of people with a PowerPoint projector behind you. Your beliefs about how bad you are at presenting affect the way that you perceive that information. So you feel that people aren't interested in what you have to say. Your perception is that they're not interested. So emotionally, you get anxious. And because you feel anxious, that affects your physiology and your body goes into that fight or flight state. So your body readies itself to run away, readies itself to fight, readies itself to just freeze. So the muscles tense. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, your pupils dilate. And the problem with the physiology is that physiology affects the way that you feel. If you've ever been ill, you'll know what I mean. If you've ever been ill, you'll know that that affects the way you feel emotionally and the way that you perceive the world around you. So that these things kind of bounce up and down. So you're feeling emotionally anxious, your physiology has changed. And what that does is that affects the way that you behave. So you behave in a way in your presentation, because this is what we're talking about at the moment, that links to how you feel and your physiology and how you perceive the world around you. So you're shaking when you're presenting. You can't remember what you're going to say next. Your mouth dries up, your muscles tense. And the thing about behavior is behavior always gets results. And the results of that behavior are that people respond in a particular way to your presentation. So they might feel really embarrassed or anxious, and they're disengaged because of the way that you're presenting. And of course, what happens then is that becomes an external event and that reinforces the whole process. So the point about this is that the way that you perceive the world affects your behavior, affects the way that you feel, and that becomes reinforced. So people who aren't very resilient to begin with, who catastrophize, who see things as crises or that aren't really crises to anybody else, it reinforces, so you become more of the same. So what I want to do is to move on to look at some of these people who are naturally very good at being resilient and look at what they do that helps them become more resilient, that you can probably copy and become more resilient yourself. So increase your score from the lower end to the higher end. And one of the key things about that is about the beliefs that people have, because we've just seen that beliefs drive behavior. And if we look at some of the key beliefs that resilient people have, we can see how they compare with the beliefs that we've got already. So for example, resilient people believe that everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they have available, which means I'm doing the best I can with the resources I've got available. And resources can be anything. It's not just about money or time. It's about emotional content. It's about an ability to learn. So, you might say, I want a job as a lorry driver, but I can't drive a lorry, so I can't do it. But if you can drive a car, you can probably drive a lorry. Or one of the resources you have is the ability to learn. So everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they have available. The map is not the territory. This is about perception and reality. And this is really about self-awareness. So if you perceive something as being traumatic or as being really difficult, and understanding that a map isn't the territory, a map is a two-dimensional representation of a territory. So my perception isn't necessarily the same as what's going on in the real world. My elephant isn't necessarily the real elephant. And that self-awareness helps you to challenge the feelings that you've got and what's going on for you at the moment. So there's only feedback. There's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. Resilient people very much focus on the idea that there is feedback, because if you believe you failed at something, that's going to affect your internal state. And a feeling of failure makes you sort of unresourceful and less resilient and less able to be optimistic and find a way forwards. And the classic story of Edison working on creating a light bulb, where he created 600 attempts that hadn't worked. And somebody said to him, well, why haven't you given up? And he said, well, I now know 600 ways of how not to make a light bulb. So that was about feedback, not failure. Another belief is that people have all the resources they need to succeed and to achieve their desired outcomes. So this again is about that internal resources, but also the resources that are around you. That if you have all the resources you need to succeed, then it's really about trying to check out what resources there are. Are they people who help you? Are they learning? Is it stuff you've got internally or external resources? And finally, you're in charge of your mind and therefore your results. And I'm in charge of my mind and therefore my results. Because if I'm not in charge of my mind, who is? And the good news about this, of course, is that everything that you've succeeded in so far in your life is down to you. The flip side of that, of course, is that everything that you haven't achieved, everything that hasn't gone the way you wanted it to go, is also down to you. And so if you're in charge of your mind, you can become more resilient. And the results are going to underpin that. So that was really just about the beliefs, because the thing about beliefs is that if you believe all of those beliefs, and if you kind of ask yourself, do I hold those beliefs naturally anyway? If you do, the chances are you're going to behave in a very resilient way. And if you don't believe them, or you feel that you can't believe all of those, then if you act as if you believe in them, so you modify your behavior as if you believe those beliefs, then you'll start to get the results that resilient people get. And so what I want to do now is to move on to some of the key behaviors, and we're going to call them top tips. So these are things that have been copied, if you like, or modeled on resilient people. So these are the things that resilient people do. The last slide was about the beliefs that resilient people believe. And this is some top tips that can help you become more resilient in these sort of really chaotic and scary times that we're in at the moment. And the first thing, and it's really important, to create and maintain good relationships. So that's good relationships with friends, with family, with work colleagues. And maintaining those can be quite difficult at the moment. If we're all working from home and we're all distanced, it's one of the reasons that Zoom traffic has increased by 580%, I read the other day. Find a way of maintaining good relationships when you're at a distance. I have regular coffee breaks with colleagues and with friends over Zoom. So we'll be sat in different houses, but we'll join at a certain time of the day and we'll have a coffee and we'll have a chat and we'll maintain those good relationships. I play in a band and we meet once a week to chat, again, through Zoom, but we're maintaining those good relationships. Secondly, crises are not insurmountable problems. Resilient people believe that nothing's unsurmountable. Whether that's true or not doesn't really matter. The point about a belief is that it affects your behavior. And if you believe that a crisis isn't insurmountable, that's going to help you to work hard to try and solve the problem. Also, that change is natural. Change is a part of living. We're constantly changing as we go through our lives. We're changing physically, we're changing emotionally. The world around us changes. We're going through a very rapid change at the moment over the last few weeks. And that's going to be a permanent change in lots of ways. But if we welcome that change and work with it, then that's going to help us to feel better about the state we're in. Resilient people focus on goals. What is it you want to achieve? I've seen lots of stuff on Facebook and other social media about, people are painting more, or they're learning yoga, or they're learning a new language. They're finding that time to focus on goals. Or it may be that this is what I want to do when the restrictions have lifted. Number 5, people take decisive actions. They might not be the right action, but a ship can't change direction unless it's moving. So if you're taking action, you can at least change that action to get back to where you want to be, or you can move on to somewhere else. Resilient people look for learning opportunities in everything that happens to them. I've got a friend who says, everything that happens to me, I ask myself, what can I learn from this? What is the learning that's going on here? Everything that happens to me is a learning opportunity. So it's not failure, it's feedback. It's an opportunity to learn something new. Number 7, develop a positive self-image. Look on yourself in a positive way. You are great. You are the best person at being you that anybody can be. So think about that in a positive way. We're very good at beating ourselves up, at saying we're rubbish, but actually we're pretty good at what we do. We're pretty good at being us. So develop that positive self-image. Resilient people tend to have a much more positive self-image than non-resilient people. Keep things in perspective. Think about the reality. I'm in a difficult situation. I'm locked in here. But there are a lot of people in the world who are a lot worse off than me. There's a lot of family and friends who are worse off than me. And this will pass. It seems like a really difficult time at the moment, but it will pass. We will come out the other side of it. So keep things in perspective and maintain a hopeful outlook. So when we do come out the other side, hopefully we'll still have some summer left. We'll still be healthy. We'll still have opportunities. Maybe we'll have made new connections. Maybe we'll have learned new things, like how to hopefully run webinars. Maybe we'll change the way that we do things. And finally, take care of yourself. You are the most important person in your life. If you get on an aeroplane, which obviously we can't do at the moment, and we have the safety announcement, the first thing that they say is, if the oxygen masks drop down from above you, you put it on your face before you help anybody else. So look after yourself, take breaks. One of the things that people are finding working from home now is that they feel like they've got to be productive for the whole of that 8 hours. The reality is that people who work in offices are only actually productive for about 3 hours a day. So take some breaks, change what you do. Have virtual coffee breaks with people, take a long lunch break, go for a walk where you can go for a walk, but take care of yourself, get sleep, get decent exercise. So they're the 10 top tips. And there's one more. Get some support. Support is really, really important. If you're finding it difficult to deal with what's going on in the world at the moment, find somebody to help. Talk through, give you ideas, give you hints, give you tips. You're on this webinar now because you're looking for some support. And this is what we can do for you. We do lots of one-to-one support for people. We coach people. We provide support, training, support in organizations. At the moment in particular, we're working with lots of people who either need some immediate help or they need some long-term support in things like how do I manage people in a virtual environment. I've never done that before, and and struggling to kind of maintain the production levels that they were achieving before this. So get some support. Talk to friends, talk to colleagues, talk to coaches, talk to counselors, whoever you need to talk to, people who've got the skills to help, and especially coaches and counselors and therapists who don't have an agenda. They're not part of your organization. So people like us can really help you individually and organizationally. So essentially, wow, that's exactly 30 minutes. That's what I wanted to say. I wanted to talk about what resilience is, that bounce back ability. I wanted to discuss how people seem to be more resilient than others. So we've talked about the fact that it's all about perception. So if you perceive something to be difficult, it is. If you perceive it to be simple, it is. And we've talked about how the fact that it's not just about personality, it's about behavior. So if you can believe a certain set of beliefs, if you can behave in a particular way, you're going to find yourself being more resilient. And then that way, we're going to come through all of this horrendous situation at the moment and come out the other side positive and ready for the opportunities that we're going to face. So thank you for your time. Thanks for listening. I'm Martin from evolution, personal and corporate development. If anybody's got any questions, then I'm happy to take some questions. If you want to just stick them in the chat at the bottom, and I'll be here for a couple of minutes. So if you want to join in with that, that would be fantastic. A couple of questions, brilliant. That seems to have disappeared. Oh, some thank yous. Bottom left-hand icon, thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thank you from Alex from Karen. Okay, I will make this available, hopefully, if I can figure out how to do it technically. Mike, yes, I will be doing some more webinars. If there's an interest, I'll repeat this one next week. And if there's any specific topic areas that have come out, then I'll put one together around that. Thank you, everybody. Yes, please to repeat. Okay, I will do that. List of top tips. Yes, we will. I'll be putting those together. And yeah, we'll put those together and make those available. Like I say, that's brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. If anybody's got any personal questions they want to contact me, then drop me an email. I know you've all got my email addresses now, so that would be absolutely fine. And I can repeat this, and other webinars will be coming along as we do. Yes, Prabha, I will be. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. I hopefully catch up with you soon, and good luck. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.